council's seat. Let's see, approval of the agenda. I don't have any modifications to the agenda. Anybody else? Move that we accept.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And town planners report.
The next meeting of the planning board is in 2 weeks, or maybe it's 3 weeks. It's 3 weeks, on April 9th. The items we have on the agenda will continue the PUD, which is hopefully close for the planning board to finish. And I've been working with Gary, and we made some final corrections, which I think the board will, be pleased with. We have a conditional use, fairly minor, for 9 Madbury Road to convert the 4th floor of commercial to residential apartments. We will probably have the public hearing for the Baghdad Road subdivision tonight. And the town council, as you know, voted to initiate 3 downtown initiatives that were proposed by the Housing Task Force. And I spoke with Paul about it. So we'll plan on having one of those for the April 9th meeting about the Central Business 1, Central Business 2, and then 2 of the other ones probably for April 23rd. So, and I'll send you information about those soon. We're planning on having an extra workshop on April 16th, as we talked about, and this is to talk about a number of the zoning changes that have been in the works, the student rental, what's going on at the edge, some of the other items, and also to talk about capacity for the town to handle these with infrastructure. Todd Selig and I will be here for that to talk with the board. We reached out to the school superintendent. Unfortunately, there's a school board meeting that night, so he can't join us. And I'm hoping Rich Rain will be able to join us too. And then finally, the issues that we've had at 361 Durham Point Road with all the activity in the buffer. The applicant submitted information to us recently arguing that the pond and therefore the swale, along with the 100-foot buffer, was exempt from our wetland overlay district by virtue of the pond being a man-made and currently maintained and non-abandoned agricultural pond. And we acknowledge that it was information, and Todd Selig, who's making the determination here, in the absence of Audrey Klein, who's the zoning administrator, but Todd is above her. We received an opinion from the town attorney that it actually was exempt, in his opinion, as a currently functioning non-abandoned agricultural pond. And Todd also reached out to some key people that have been involved with Rob Sullivan and Paul, and some members of the Conservation Commission. And we had a meeting today. Only Rob and Paul were able to join us. And we talked with the town attorney, and after this meeting, reviewing all of the documentation, the town attorney's opinion, Todd determined that the pond is a currently maintained non-abandoned agricultural pond and is therefore exempt from the wetland ordinance, and therefore the 100-foot buffer does not apply. And so the activity that the property owner has been doing within the buffer is now permitted, since it's exempt from the wetland overlay district. And we forwarded that letter, and I believe Todd is going to put something in Friday updates about this for the public to look at. And that's all I have.
Questions for Michael? All right. Reports from board members who serve on other committees. Town council?
Yes, so the town council met on the 17th, and we had a number of unanimous consent items that included a lot of approvals for the construction contracts for the Madbury Complete Streets program. So Anybody driving along that area is probably already surprised to see that there's already activity going on along Madbury Road, which is really exciting as we continue to try and improve that major corridor coming into Durham. We also had a presentation on single-use bags, and it was actually a very interesting presentation. It's just looking to have a resolution supporting a statewide initiative to stop the distribution of single-use plastic bags at the grocery store. So that was interesting. And then we had several zoning amendments regarding housing that came out of the suggestions from the Housing Task Force, and happy to report that all 3 of those were approved to move forward over to the planning board. So we'll be hearing, I guess, public hearings scheduled for that. And those included splitting the central business district between CB1 and CB2. So that sort of separates the Mill Plaza section, which is a really good thing because, you know, the rules that are applying along in that area, it's just better to try and focus on those 2 areas being separate. And then we had a multi-residential zoning amendment that added multi-unit residential in Churchill, professional office and courthouse, and another zoning amendment as well on the 3-story height limit. And we got through those in a pretty fast way. I think there's been enough dialogue through several other town council meetings, but I thought that the evening was very efficient and things went well. And we'll see what happens next on those initiatives with housing in the downtown core. And that's it.
Okay, anyone else? Stratford Regional Planning Commission had a meeting. I have a few items of note. First one's in Somersworth. They're putting in a 2.6 megawatt solar installation on the old Superfund site on Blackwater Road. They're using about a quarter of that land to do the 2.6 megawatts. This is a really good use for that land since they're not allowed to do anything else except monitor. You know, right now they have an ongoing monitoring requirement, so it really restricts what they can do with the land, and putting static solar on it is going to be a good one. With regards to the transportation plans, our bridge work on Bennett Road, the undersized bridge, is being delayed right now to 2028 due to project management staffing issues. So that's getting pushed out a year. And in the 10-year plan now, they're looking at traffic improvements at the Town Hall Road, Madbury Road, 155 intersection, just across the border there of town. So that's, like I said, that's just entered the 10-year plan, but they going to be looking at something to try to make that intersection safer. That was that. All right. So then our next item is public comments. If there's anyone here who'd like to make public comments that are not on items that are on our agenda tonight, this is the time to do so. Do we have any hands in Zoom?
Not right now.
Thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 8. Will be a public hearing for the proposed amendment to the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, Section 175-86C and F of the zoning ordinance. Remove requirement to connect with town sewer if it's not available, since it's not available in most of the district, and to make single-family residences exempt from the requirement to connect to an underground stormwater system. So can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Gary. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone here who would like to speak on the aquifer amendment? Are there any hands in Zoom?
Yes, there is one.
They may speak. All right, Beth.
Thank you. Beth Olshansky, Packers Falls Road. I just want to follow up with this since I was originally one of the people that raised the current ordinance as a concern. It seems like this new language more accurately reflects the way the town has been treating the district for the last 20 years. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this amended ordinance. Thank you.
Was there another hand in Zoom?
Yes, there is.
Who was that?
Em, it's your turn.
M?
Hi, I have Ruby with me who is having a little bit of a hard time, so I'll do my best. I need the best timing. Okay. So I would just, I think that the planning board saw the email from Rick Rain on this kind of question. And I do have some concerns about not requiring a town hookup because septic tanks are not able to filter out a number of pollutants, including PFAS. And I would hope that the planning board would do its sort of due diligence with this ordinance. I mean, one of my concerns is that as written, this ordinance would enable any underlying use for that district to go on a septic system. And so I have questions about how that would play out for any more commercial uses, including accessory uses to homes. And also I would like to know a little bit more about septic systems and best processes. I mean, if septic systems were to be permitted for, say, single-family homes in this district, then are there best practices that should be required along with that, such as proof of pump outs every 3 years or things like that? What sorts of things would really protect our aquifer? And I know that, you know, the planning department is under some pressure from town council to increase the tax base, and certainly everyone is concerned about, you know, affordable housing and creating more housing options, housing need, but we're also, the planning department is responsible for this for the 50-year and longer term, and protecting our source of drinking water is very crucial to that. And my concern is that, as written, the language changes basically null the aquifer overlay district from being different from the underlying districts. And so it kind of raises the question of, why do we have this aquifer overlay district? And what is it trying to achieve and protect? And I'd like to know more about, I mean, I think what sets it apart right now is this requirement to connect to town sewer and water. And maybe that's a little bit too broad of a brush, but that was probably an easy way to ensure that the aquifer is protected without going into more nuanced requirements. And so I'd ask the planning board to just do its due diligence on this one and to get more technical about exactly what sorts of uses could possibly be on top of the aquifer and what are the best practices that should be employed to protect our water source from things like PFAS, and thinking ahead 50 to 100 years. And that's it.
Thank you. Are there any other hands in Zoom?
Not at the moment. Although, wait, somebody has just shown up. new person in Zoom, you may want to just say what we're doing again.
Yeah, okay. We are currently in the middle of the public hearing for the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. If you'd like to speak, this is your last chance. Shall we
No
close?
other hands.
All right, shall we close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second it.
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Discussion.
I have a comment. I think that based on what I'm hearing, we might want to consider not disregarding M's comment, but decoupling it from the issue in front of us. Because it's a very large question, really, of planning, and I'd really like to hear Michael's view on it. But it's a very large view of planning to say most of the town of Durham is affected by this. Most of the undeveloped land is affected by this. So it's a very large question. What we have now, the current system is really not a prohibition on development unless you have town sewer and stormwater systems. We're really permitting it. So now we're just doing a technical correction. It's a much larger question in my mind, whether we have in place sufficiently demanding standards for septic systems to prevent damage to the aquifer from residential development. That's a very big picture. I don't really think that should be what's before us in this more technical correction, which just seems to go to the issue of what.
A lot of that, and also align myself with a lot of what Im said. We have a lot of constraints if you're near water, and there are different standards if you're near, if you're in a wetland overlay district. The protection of the aquifer seems critical, and so I don't know, without some sort of additional technical understanding about, is there additional requirements that might be in place for, say, a septic system? I think there would be if you're near water, and if the state recommends those. So I think before I would go too far down this, I'd want to know some technical things about, historically, why was it put in place, and then are there additional standards that might be provided for septic systems if they are in this type of area?
So so this doesn't necessarily apply for things that are near water. It's the areas where the water infiltrates down into the water.
No, I understand. What I'm saying is that classically, we would have a separate standard if you were near water, and this is the standard is you're above the water.
Okay.
And when you're above the water, I think the question is the normal standard okay, or should we think, is there an additional standard that should be placed on the septic system, and maybe additional constraints or design elements or other things to prevent that from essentially leaching down into the aquifer and making its way? So technically, I think there's some things I don't understand, and I don't know if there's some best practices that we might want to adopt if we were to open this up.
Now,
Councilor Long?
yes, if I am interpreting the map correctly that was provided, the green hatched areas are the areas that fall within the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. And the reason for decoupling the sewer hookup requirement from the Aquifer Protection Overlay District is that there's only one small area in the vicinity of Technology Drive that is both in the Aquifer Protection Overlay District and where sewer is accessible. And I would tend to agree that it is unreasonable to expect houses to hook up to a sewer system in locations where sewer systems are not available. I mean, what we may want here is some language saying that if there is a sewer system, if there's a sewer line available at your location, then you have to hook up to that sewer line, but not require property owners that don't have access to sewer to provide that access.
Okay.
I guess I could just say that I think what we're talking about is the cross-hatched areas that have the diagonal lines that are sort of scattered around. These are very far, so the effect now of not adopting the amendment is in my mind, now that we know, that there was this technical problem, is to sort of say, no single-family residential development in those areas. And I just think that's, I'm like Peyton, I don't know enough about the current stresses on the aquifer, if there are any, if our density requirements are, but my sense is that there's not that much density and that the septic systems in the right places generally work and that they're subject to review and diligence when the plans are, and engineering, and those engineering plans have to be approved. I understand that there may be some contaminants that don't make it out, that can make it out of a septic system, but it just seems extreme to me to say no more residential development in these areas. It's kind of a large policy decision to make when what's before us is just a technical amendment that sort of makes correct what we're already doing as a town. Now, is it always legitimate to look at more stringent septic regulations? But that's really a very different discussion in my mind. That's why I think they should be decoupled.
And the septic that's all approved by the state, isn't it?
Right.
So it's not really in our purview, and you have to go on the assumption that most people that are installing new builds, that are installing new septics, are purchasing the most up-to-date version. And those that are replacing older septics that are failing are again purchasing the most up-to-date, because it's not something you like to have to do often. And you also, and all property owners, it's in their best interest to have the best system that is available. And they're commonly just sold like that. And there are standards that the state is requiring already. So, and certainly I agree to say no single family in these, we can't do that. That would be a taking of their land.
Now that we know about it, that's kind of what we'd be doing.
Yeah, that would be. And I'm really not even sure, I mean, I kind of on the precipice when it comes to requirements of pumping and proving that you pumped your septic. I see where it could be valuable, but I'm not sure how we would enforce that, and I don't think it would be very popular. I think it would get a lot of people up in arms about unnecessary, policing of their land. Most people do it, and if they don't, they suffer the consequences of it. And it's not great when your septic is overflowing, but most people do it on the basis that seems appropriate for their use. I think that would be a bit strong-arming the community.
I also see the note that was given us on some additional information, I guess, was it also notes here that the Conservation Commission supported the change. So I also
As it's written, yeah.
yeah.
They discussed it pretty thoroughly.
All right, so we have the language, so is this 3 different versions of the
Yeah,
site
I'm trying to
drainage
figure out
paragraph?
what, because now you have the
just
CCC.
give a clarification. Somebody asked about the who
March
approves
26th.
leach fields. The state Division of Environmental Services approves leach fields. I know they have a pretty strict review. They're very careful. They look at your soils and your percolation rates and your test pits and all that. I don't believe they have different standards if you're in an aquifer, because it's a local aquifer overlay district. So it's most likely they have just one set of standards, but they are based on soils, and the aquifer is very, very well drained soils. So I would think that they have, pretty strict standards in those locations, whether it's in our aquifer or not. The town we do have an article on our zoning ordinance, Article 24, about septic systems, which regulates the process for taking test pits and spacing of test pits, depth to seasonal high water, depth to ledge. But it just has to do with process and a couple of standards, and this applies everywhere in the town. I'm not aware if any of this is stricter than the state. I'll find that out. That's a good question. In terms of what I put in front of you, there's two parts to this amendment. One of them is to remove the requirement that any development in the aquifer overlay be tied into town sewer. And the second part of that it has to do with drainage for any development. And there's a paragraph dealing with site drainage that's a little bit demanding. And the proposed change is simply to exempt single family from that. But most of what's developed in the outlying areas is single family. In the rural, residence, coastal zones, there's not very much multifamily or commercial that's allowed. So it is mainly single family. The Conservation Commission looked at these two changes on Monday, and they supported the change to remove the requirement to tie into sewer. On the other change regarding drainage, excuse me, they offered some alternative language to that paragraph that you have in front of you. And this was actually taken from Exeter, that also has an aquifer overlay district. But I spoke with Rich Rain about this today, because I thought you'd probably want to know his thoughts. And he actually offered me some other language today that I think is quite good. It's simpler. His recommended language for drainage would not be to exempt single family, but simply all runoff from impervious surfaces shall be recharged on site and treated through structural best management practices to the maximum extent practical. Rich actually suggests practicable. I think practical is the word that is preferred. So you have a few options in front of you. I don't know if there are additional requirements for septic systems that you might specify in the overlay district. The treatment methods have come a long way, and the pretty standard methods now they're smaller systems. They have a smaller leach field, and they're very good at removing some of the elements. But I don't know if there's a higher level that might be required in the aquifer. I'm assuming, I don't want to put Mr. Mayor on the spot. I'm assuming that.
So, the way I see it, if we have enough members who feel that we need more information before making this decision, we can table this to a later meeting. Or we can perhaps go with Rich Rain's suggested paragraph C and move this forward. How are people feeling on those, between those two?
Kind of like Rich's. I like
I
Rich
appreciate
Rain's.
that he gave us the feedback, and for the site drainage, I think that's important, probably even more so than the septic. And so that language, I haven't seen that, but I think that sounds like it's appropriate, and that sounds like it makes a lot of sense and is professionally advised by, Rich. So I'm inclined to go with that, and then I agree on the septic side of things. So I would move forward with Rich's adoption, but it would be nice to see that language.
Is this,
It was on the table.
It's on the one on the table,
I passed
yeah.
that out.
It was on the table when you
It
arrived.
looks like you have three pieces of the C.
Here.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's C, site drainage, the last C,
Right.
the bottom C,
No, here it is.
or the middle C.
Yeah, the middle C, I believe, was the Conservation Commission's
suggested language.
Yes. Yes, so the
Which is,
first
Yeah,
one
the
was
structural
the
best management.
suggested, the second one is from the Conservation Commission, the third one's from Public Works.
I like
Could you, Michael, could you share your thinking behind, to me, Rich's requirement is more stringent that the stormwater be managed on the site than your proposed practical. Practicable means if it can be done, it must be done. Practical means is kind
Does it make sense?
of a pain, and we really don't want to do it, so it's not practical. Which was your thinking?
Well, as a planner, this question comes up periodically. Frankly, I always prefer practical, because practical, I think, means is it workable, is it realistic, is it reasonable, all those things. Whereas my understanding of practicable is it means feasible, which is the same as possible. And I personally, as a planner, I don't really think practicable is a great, because anything's possible, and it doesn't consider how realistic or
But in the
expensive.
context of this, are there situations where in a lot the size that we would require for a single-family dwelling, it couldn't be recharged on a site typically? I'm just
If they're
wondering.
doing it via the site, there is, the recharging's always based on a certain storm level, and it's not based on a 1,000-year storm level. You know, it's based more on the 20-year, 50-year, 50-year to 100-year storm expectations. So there's always the potential for a storm to come through, a nor'easter, a hurricane, for instance, that would overtax whatever system is put in place.
But is there a way in which the statute operates to incorporate that sort of built-in, that is sort of a built-in practicality
That's built into the
standard?
site plan regs.
That's in the site plan regs. So you have sort of a built-in practicality standard, because it would, even if you use the practicable, it would be subject to the 50-year flood analysis?
Well, except for single-family houses are exempt from the site plan regs, but anything else beyond a two-family house would be.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't feel all that strong.
I'm comfortable with the language in Rich's suggested language and the F change, and I'd be comfortable with adopting this as is. And if we decide we want additional things, like Em was asking about, or if we wanted to change some of this language, we can always revisit this.
Yeah.
So I think as written, to clean up the clear F1 error, I think this works.
All right. And we'll take a motion then?
I move that we move forward with the proposed amendment, subject to the incorporation of Rich's language.
Second.
Seconded by Peyton. Any further discussion? All right, so we are voting on initiating the amendment to the town council. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's 6. Opposed? No. It's a 6-0 vote. In favor of initiating the amendment. All right. Item 9, this will be a public hearing on the invasive plant species and site plan regulations, amendment proposed by the Conservation Commission to Article 5, landscaping and screening standards, and appendix of the site plan regulations pertaining to invasive plant species. So with this particular one, they are cleaning up how they reference their list of invasive species. And I guess a few things are being updated, but they're all also coming off of a state list as well. Right? And we're just basically copying the state list into our zoning regs.
Right, and just refining the list that they give, which is not complete, it's a partial list, but it's intended to be the most common species that as a useful reference.
All right.
All right.
Is there, let's have a public hearing on this. Any questions for Michael before we open the public hearing?
On 5.4.9, the language indicates that the state is maintaining the list, which we're incorporating by reference, so whenever the state updates their list, it means our list is also updated.
Correct.
Right, automatically.
And then just one more question, I think it's already been answered, but just to clarify. So there's nothing included here that's above and beyond the state regulations. We're adopting essentially this updated state regulations.
Well,
as
the
is.
one thing that is above and beyond is that the state has a couple of lists. They have a list of prohibited species, and then they have a watch list, which is not prohibited. In these regulations, we are prohibiting the state's prohibited list and their watch list. But keep in mind that this has limited applicability. It's only when a commercial or multifamily application comes to you and you are approving their actual landscaping plan. So this is not affecting any homeowners and not affecting what anybody does with their site except as part of a site plan review.
Thanks.
All right. All right, shall we open the public hearing?
Sure. I move we open the public hearing.
Second that?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, is there anyone who'd like to speak on this matter? I have no one in the room. Any hands in Zoom?
Yes, there is one, but it's been up for a while. M?
Hello, I'm wrapping up project lists here. My public comment this evening, I kind of want to address the fact that the planning board is considering, updates to the site plan regulations, and take the opportunity to ask that the planning board consider 3 additional site plan corrections as we anticipate several large projects coming forward. Riverwoods, downtown improvements, affordable housing, the edge at West End. And so I'd ask that the planning board consider, 1, adding insect-friendly lighting requirements per the research that was shared by Peyton and the email that Michael sent out a few months back, I think back in November. 2, to adopt the language from the New Hampshire Office of Planning and Zoning, which in their model stormwater management requirements, this is item 6C4, states that cut and fill shall be minimized. The maximum height of any fill or depth of any cut area, as measured from the natural grade, shall not be greater than 10 feet. And I bring this up because of the controversy around steep slopes in the past, and that remains undefined in our site plan regulations. The grade is defined, but not the amount of fill that is permitted, and I think that would add a quantified amount to the site plans, and it would smooth further applications at their approval processes. And I will send out a follow-up email to Michael with these comments that includes a link to where that model on ordinance is located. And third, I would ask that the planning board consider adopting site plan regulations that work to preserve Durham's rural character in its gateway areas by adopting the requirements for native and naturalized planting that are outlined in the wetland shoreline overlay rewrite currently with Concom, and adopt those into the site plan regulations as well. And so as we see areas of 108 and 155 be developed, this would help to preserve that rural character in those gateway areas.
All right, thank you. Are there any other hands in Zoom?
Not at the moment.
Last chance here in the room. Shall we close the public hearing?
Move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. So if any, I mean, I don't believe we have any urgent reason to be passing this in an expeditious manner. So if there's any of these that people feel really would be appropriate for us to do, we can just table this and try to bring those in and deal them with one shot. Because we do run the risk, there is so much right now in the pipeline that if we pass this, we may not come back to touching the site plan regs for 6 or 8 months.
Wow.
So if any of those items, and a couple of them, I mean, the cut and fill requirement thing might be valid for us to be chasing down right now. So I would, so I ask you if there's enough interest in trying to deal with that now, as opposed to continuing to put it off. In which case, what we'll do is we'll put this onto another agenda, we'll push it to end of April, early May, and bring in the new language for review.
But isn't, if you start talking about reviewing the site plan regulations, which we had thought of as a project, that's going to be extensive, and this is something the Conservation Commission wanted done for a cleanup, and it's not a lot just to approve it and let it move so that it's updated while we continue with a project that could take an extensive period of time.
Could be another year.
Well, that's why I would only want to, I wouldn't want to be doing a major rewrite, but if something in here is if we have things that look simple enough that we could do in a night, then I'd be willing to throw them on. But that's why I'm throwing that out there. And I want to get your opinions, so.
I'm with Heather on this. I think we have something that's fairly contained here and scoped, and so I'd be inclined to go ahead and move this forward and sort of get this done, and then if we need and want to revisit that with some of the additions that Emily specified, we could do that at any point, but at least we could get this sort of cleared and approved. That would seem to me to be appropriate, because I've reviewed this, I've looked at it, I'm ready to go on this. But if we open things up, all of a sudden something could get complicated. So I'd be inclined to sort of scope this, keep it where it is, and move it forward.
All right, then, are you ready to make a motion on that?
A motion to adopt the language on the invasive species as outlined in our Wednesday, March 26 notes here.
I second that.
Seconded by Rob. All right, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that was 6-0. That site plan's regs, so that's adopted. All right, our next item, item 10. This will be a public hearing for 3 Dover Road, the new Dunkin' Donuts. Site plan application for new 1,500 plus or minus square foot Dunkin' Donuts restaurant on a quarter-acre lot located next to the Holiday Inn Express. JSP Enterprises property owner, Jim Mitchell and Scott Mitchell, Tropic Star Development LLC applicant, Matt Perry, civil engineer, the engineering corp, Scott Thornton, traffic engineer, Van Ness and Associates. This is the Courthouse District, map 108, lot 38.
Good evening, board members. We just really wanted to come in and give you guys an update of where we stand and what we've been doing since we last saw you guys. So we invited the DOT down to meet on site, and we met them last week, probably around 9 o'clock, 8:30. And we spent probably an hour on the site, walking the site, talking about the site. And one of the things we mentioned to them is, we don't have a problem with the right in, right out on our driveway, but, we're not going to be able to restrict the hotel's driveway. And so we observed the traffic, and we asked him to go back and talk to his, all
Team.
his team, yeah, all the members of his, whoever he's reporting to or whatever. And, you know, why we were there, and I just want to tell you, I live in Guilford, my office is in Hampton, so I'm traveling an hour and a half every day to Hampton to go there. And I've been making it a point to go here every morning and get a coffee at Dunkin' Donuts and sitting in that parking lot with my car. You probably, if anybody has driven by, they've seen me there. I've had a few people wave and peep the horn. So I think Mr. Appleton was a little bit surprised that the traffic is not, you know, we didn't see any time, maybe twice in 1 minute.
For about a minute, yeah.
Yeah, a left-hand turn going in there. We're not, you know, and that's on our driveway. It didn't stack up, so, you know, I thought Dunkin' Donuts business is from 6 o'clock in the morning till probably 11:30, something like that. I don't see the traffic problem that everybody's saying that there is. There is, I guarantee you, there is at 4 o'clock, you know? I see it stack up, but you gotta remember now, we're gonna have a right in, right out. So anybody that's coming that way is not gonna be a problem, right? And I think Mr. Appleton, so we've asked him to go back. He hasn't gotten back to us yet, but we wanted to give the board this information and see you in person. And we'd like to invite any of you there, if you'd like to come down and sit and have a cup of coffee with me and observe this for yourself. And one of the other things I wanted to mention to you guys as well was, prior to me building the courthouse, I call it the courthouse gas station, but, you know, the Irving Oil with Dunks. Dunkin' was in the Gibbs store. I don't know if you guys, if any of you remember that, but Dunkin' was in there for, I don't know how many years before they came over with me onto my spot. So I just wanted to mention that to you and give you that update and invite any of you if you want to see it for yourself, because I'm pretty confident that Roger is going to agree to not restrict a driveway that I don't own, that I only have an easement on. And, you know, we'll restrict our driveway. And we'll also, we talked about maybe placing a sign on our property, which we're not going to be able to do it on the hotel property, because we don't own it.
I don't know if you can see the cursor, but somewhere in this region over here, which is
You know, at
that
the end, it just
bottom
says no
left-hand corner.
turn, you know what I mean? So,
And I think the other thing that I'd like to mention is the item that we brought up, well, I can't say we brought up, but the board had brought up at the last meeting was if in fact we were able to accept the right-in, right-out, is to have a mountable island that goes in between the right-in and right-out that would kind of fall in this middle section here of the driveway. And so we had discussed that with Roger and provided,
cut sheet or whatever, yeah.
Which is basically a mountable concrete grooved surface so that the delivery truck would still be able to maneuver on the site and back in safely, but it's enough that you're not going to want to hit it. So I think it achieves what everybody's been looking for thus far. So the moral of the story, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just going to have one just sort of observation.
Yes.
So I actually went out to dinner the night before that, and I was in downtown Durham, and it was spring break, and downtown Durham was basically shut down. The restaurants were shut down, and the next morning I woke up and I drove to work, and I saw you with the DOT truck there, and I was like,
a lot of people did.
and I was like, it's an unfortunate, you know, it's sort of an unfortunate thing that it was spring break, because I'm not sure that represents the normal traffic flow. It's possible, and it would be like that in the summer most likely, but you kind of hit it on a weird week there, where I drove by and I was like, there wasn't a lot of traffic, and I'd just been downtown the night before and it was kind of empty. So I was like, it's a little unfortunate. I'm not sure, and I'm sure you're there in other times. You know, I'm driving that every day, so it's like, I was like unlucky to have that happen, but I just did want to comment that that was a spring break week. Correct.
Right. And just so you know, I was there this morning. I was there Monday. I was there Friday. You know, I've been going, you know, purposely to look at it, and that's why I say...
And at different times.
Yeah, and at different times.
Yeah.
And we own the gas station. We know what's there. I mean, we're not
we're not blind, right?
Yeah.
I know at 4 o'clock, and, maybe it starts around 2, I'd say, is my guess. I see
Once
it.
school lets out, I
Yeah.
would imagine that.
I grant you, but in the morning, I don't see it. I really don't.
But I think the
And
important.
I think he doesn't see it either, and he had been there, his office is right down the street, you know what I mean? It's not like he doesn't go there. So, we'd like to invite you guys, and if you want to go and observe it for yourself, I'd be happy to meet you on site.
And is one concern that they would exit out of above the restaurant, that they would exit and take a left and then come down that essentially hotel area there, and then take a left from there?
Yes, I think that's the concern. It's obviously, it's not to go downtown or right or whatever,
Right.
right? And, Dunkin' Donuts business is, I've done probably 40 of those deals in my career. And, they're really busy from 5 o'clock till like 11 o'clock. After, I'd say probably 80% or maybe 85 is done in those hours.
Right.
You get a few people like me that drink a coffee at 4 o'clock or whatever. There's a few of us out there, you know what I mean? But there's not, the majority of their business is done, from 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. And that's when they're not stacked up there, and it's not a problem, you know what I mean? And I mean, after seeing it myself, I don't want to restrict my driveway, because I really think a left-hand turn is fine at certain times there, but, DOT, I can live with it. We've talked to our tenant can live with it, but I can't restrict the driveway that I don't own.
Yeah.
It's just impossible.
The point that I wanted to make is, how did we kind of get, how did we get here? And, as a reminder to the board members, when we initially came in, we were planning on having a full access driveway, which was illustrated by the drawing that we had that had the turning pocket that everybody disliked very much so. And can understand that there are absolutely times, and I've been here numerous times myself, where I've witnessed at that, 3, 4 o'clock window where it goes beyond Bayview Drive. And, we're now to the point where we had suggested to DOT that we have a right in, right out, but we would have a left-hand turn movement out of the driveway, which is illustrated, I guess, best by this large black block here for the ADA accessibility pad, which would allow during non-peak hours that cars would be able to move out of our site and make that left-hand turn movement. But it seemed to be that the board didn't favor that, nor the letter that we got from DOT once we dove into it was not a proponent of that. So to Scott's point, we are going with the right in, right out proposal now for our driveway. We just can't restrict a driveway that we don't own, meaning the one that our abutter does.
And we expect, he said probably a week for him, so I expect by the next time I'm here, I'll have that answer for you.
But if you do keep in mind too, the one other thing I wanted to say is, if you're at the hotel or you're any of the people that are the residents that live in there, why would you not go out at the traffic light?
You would, of course.
Yeah, right. Okay. Do you have a slide that shows the bigger picture, including the hotel and the
An aerial
Irving
of
across the
sort?
street?
Like an aerial?
An area view, yes.
Yeah, I don't unfortunately have an aerial that I can pull up unless you have internet I can get on.
It'd be useful to see the position
Yeah,
of
Durham
the
Guest.
hotel
Just click on Durham Guest.
driveway in
Okay.
relation to the intersection. I've looked at it, and I think I understand it, but I think that's kind of what the big picture is.
Right, but so, I want to remind myself exactly what the configuration is of driveways
Thank you
here. In
for that.
particular, the Irving has a driveway that goes out.
have two
to Dover
we have
Road
3 driveways, actually.
And a driveway that goes out to New Market Road. I know that
Correct.
the one on New Market Road is restricted, is right in, right out by a center.
A median strip.
Okay, yeah. Member of the public is,
I do.
right, but I'm new on the board, so I did not receive that, but.
So here we are,
I was
right?
able to pull it up, so
Okay, so this is,
our site is,
okay, so Yeah, so the hotel driveway is not quite aligned with the Dover Road driveway in and out
Well,
of.
this is the main for the
Right.
hotel. This goes back to apartments back here, but
Okay.
it can also come.
So the path that's going to be the
Yeah,
trouble.
if you could just show, maybe perhaps show the
Oh, there it
traffic
is.
Right.
flow
It's
of
up there.
exiting traffic coming out
Okay.
of the hotel, so then I think it would be, everyone would be able to see exactly what we're
I
talking
know what you're talking
about.
about. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So you have a traffic light right there that's controlled for the hotel, and I don't know, there's a few duplexes or
I don't
whatever.
know. I don't know how easy it is to see my cursor here. It's the
Yeah, I can see
box
that.
that's
I
at
can see
our
that.
driveway, but that's where we have our right-in, right-out driveway.
Right.
This is an aisleway behind the hotel, and
Right.
we would have access to use this as well
Right.
via the easement. But what we're talking about is restricting
Right.
something that we don't own. So therefore, we had offered to put a
Right,
sign
right, yes.
on this corner of our property, just saying
yes.
that you can't make a
Okay,
left-hand
yeah.
And
turn.
we're also gonna do the
But-
same thing at the end
The other way.
of the easement.
Correct, yes.
to Say,
In-
do
in-
not enter,
and
you know,
the-
for our customers on our site.
No right-hand turn.
You know what I mean?
So that people don't here, which is a full access cut, there also is a cut right here. And you can, as you're coming from downtown, make the left-hand turn into the site. Presently, I saw someone do that this afternoon, got frustrated with it, then came to the intersection to make the appropriate left-hand turn. There's a loop in the driveway, then it also comes back behind the hotel, services these residents, and then ultimately, they could exit this way. The only time I've ever seen a vehicle leaving this way
saw
was
one.
when we were on site. We saw a bus that must have been like a tour bus or something, or maybe it was a school visiting, or I'm not quite sure, like a Greyhound bus. And now it's, I think, of the access here. You can see that the turning pocket that exists here on Dover Road extends back to about this point here beyond the Irving site, which is right here.
So it would be fair to say that, would it not, that your position is that people coming will still be able to come around, and most people would choose to come around in the short road behind the hotel to that intersection. And if they want to make a left turn, they'll have to disregard a sign that you'll have placed there. First, they'll have to disregard that. There won't be a physical barrier, but they'll have to disregard the no left turn sign.
Correct.
And they'd also have to regulate themselves and wait until a safe opportunity. And if someone were very conservative and knew the lay of the land, they might go around behind the
They're going
hotel
to.
and come out at the signal,
That's
but
the
that's
thing.
relatively less likely. Is that sort of the way you see it?
Yeah, I think the geometry of that hotel lends itself to anything to the left of the hotel being serviced by that full access light. There's no reason why I would ever want to go out and behind it to make the
That's
turning
all.
movement. I just wait for the traffic light.
But, you know, the thing that I've just been amazed at it all, you know, and every day traveling this way, you know, and I disagree with DOT. A left-hand turn in there in the morning's not a problem. It's not. In my driveway.
In the afternoon.
But, you know, I mean,
In the afternoon.
I grant you,
Doesn't matter.
at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, I see the traffic, you know.
Yeah, I think the
Right.
thing that we're trying to articulate is that, you know, we've heard the board, we've heard DOT, and we're making
Trying to
every
please
concession,
everybody.
every concession that we can.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do our best to, you know, explain and provide the update.
Right, and I get that DOT is basically offering up a worst-case scenario, that you would actually have a business there, some successor to Dunkin' Donuts that would do much more business in the
Right.
afternoon peak.
Well, before that, it was the Cumberland Farms. And there's 2 curb cuts that are still
Are in the
presently
front.
on the front.
Yeah, there's
of that.
one-
Plus,
one
they
over
had the
here.
easement.
One over here in front of
Yeah.
that piece of sidewalk, and
That's
then
where the easement
where
came
we're
from.
proposing.
Right. Right, because long ago, Cumberland
ready
Farms
for a
was a
public
gas
hearing?
station.
Correct, with 2 pumps.
Yeah.
Are we ready for a public hearing, or you have a
so.
question for the applicant?
There's only one movement that really causes like a big safety issue, and that's the non-marked driveway going left if that becomes a problem, is there something you can do to mitigate that? Or you think no matter what, because of the private property issue,
I mean,
that's
I've got a
gonna
good
stay like
relationship
that?
with the owner there. I met him through a mutual broker friend of mine, and, you know, we have a good relationship, so I'm sure if it becomes a problem, I could talk to him, but I really don't see it as a problem. You know what I mean? If I didn't think this was a safe gig, I wouldn't do it, because I'm gonna invest a lot of money to do this. And let me tell you, pulling Dunkin' Donuts out of my gas station and putting them here and building, not scraping this building, buying it, I'm gonna tell you, the deal's gonna be sideways for a few years. It's not a win for us. But I'm sick of looking at this place, to be honest with you.
Who isn't?
You know, and I'm doing the renovations in my gas station as soon as they leave. We're gonna redo the whole station outside. And, you know, they've
Sorry.
been a tenant of mine for 15 years, and I do feel some kind of obligation to try, and let's face it, in Durham, the strip is this long, man, that's it, there's only.
At least downtown, you're
All right,
right.
so,
I mean-
so I guess the answer is probably there's no known solution besides.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not gonna tell you something that's not true.
All right, shall we open the public hearing then?
Move we open the public hearing.
A second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, is there anyone here who'd like to speak on this matter?
Thank you, no, it's okay.
So you, what did they hide you out back or something?
It's easy, I live right down there, so I was able to get here fast. My name is Gwendolyn Howard, and I live on Bayview Road, so I actually think I might be in a butter to that property. I have a written letter, which I will actually give you a hard copy submission of, but I'm going to paraphrase because I'm sure you all have other things that you'd like to do with your evening. But in talking with the residents of Bayview, many of which walk that area fairly consistently, we just would like to be sure that the vehicular and the pedestrian traffic concerns are taken very seriously. Now, I think what I'm hearing is this gentleman, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Scott.
Scott, has said that they've agreed to the no left turnout of your property, which is, I think, very good news. But I think we also have to make sure that anything that you can do to make it safer for pedestrians to walk along that way is done. That is, the between I'm sorry?
We're gonna put sidewalks in.
Yep, sidewalks are great, probably striping, you know, some type of a crosswalk at the entrance. But, you know, there's probably 4 entrances right now that people have to navigate between Bayview and the light. And I can tell you that there's speeding that goes on in that road. I mean, there's cars that do not obey the signal, the pedestrian cross signal that's up at the top. And so it's really important that the pedestrian traffic be taken into consideration. Oh, and also, cars turning from Newmarket Road don't even hesitate if they're going towards Dover. They basically just swoop that corner. I literally will wait at the light and see it turn, and then I will turn and look the driver in the eye as they are starting to make the turn. And I've even on occasion put my hand up and said, stop. Okay, so that's something, and that's with the flashing pedestrian light telling them that they're not supposed to be walking. So it is not a very safe area, and yet there is a need for people to be able to walk there safely. A couple just comments. I mean, I know you've been out in the area, and I think one gentleman mentioned that it might have been during student break. But as far as timing is concerned, students drink coffee all the time. The waves of traffic into that Dunkin' Donuts are most likely going to be as classes are letting out. It's probably not going to be consistent with the typical 8 to 5 workday. I think that the fact that it's going to be a standalone building is going to make the business more visible. That's good news for you, right? But I think it also means that there's going to be more traffic there, potentially, than there has been in the Irving station, because I think there's people who probably don't even know that there's a Dunkin' Donuts in that Irving station.
We should have you talk to my tenant.
But I think the most important thing is that it be safe. So I guess I'm just here to ask the planning board in a more eloquent way in the writing to take into strong consideration the safety concerns, both vehicular and pedestrian. And then the only other thing I would comment on is neither traffic study actually included the road all the way down to Bayview. If you went back to that overlay that you just had up a minute ago, I thought it was kind of fascinating to kind of strum through and notice that nobody actually looked at that. You know, we have a lot of difficulty getting out of Bayview Road now when there's traffic queuing for the light going to Newmarket, largely because cars stack two abreast far before they're supposed to. So, you know, in the mornings, and I will tell you that that is a problem in the mornings, you know, there's school bus traffic and trying to get out of there. Thankfully, I don't work, but it is difficult to get out of that road. So I think that those are some important considerations. I don't know who I should give this to. Give it to you, Jim. This is for the planning board.
Pass that over to Michael.
Thank you.
We'll copy that, Pat, and send that around.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Chairman, can I please make just 2 quick points in regards to Gladwin's comments?
If we let everybody speak, and then you can
Certainly,
address them as a
absolutely,
group.
thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Any hands in Zoom?
The neighbors on Bayview Road, and I think you also had at least one other letter submitted.
Thank you. Any hands in Zoom?
No.
All right. You may respond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick notes that I want to make, and absolutely noted by Ms. Howard, is that right? Okay. I want to make sure I had it correct. So first and foremost, as the intersection of Bayview is approximately 250 feet from our edge of property to the Bayview driveway, which is noted. Secondarily, like Scott was saying earlier, our traffic curb cut is in this general region where the cursor is today. And we currently have a small section of sidewalk with another curb cut on the other side. So if I change and go back to this image, you can see here we have a sidewalk that goes the entire frontage of the property. At this point here, we're going to have to modify this a little bit. I believe one of the comments made was, did we want the piano painted or the lines, but we want to be consistent with whatever is the preference. But nonetheless, we'll have a painted sidewalk here, but it's going to have that mountable, I guess I'll call it a pork chop. And then we're going to continue this other little small section here to the edge of our property. So we are trying to define the curb cut. We are bringing it up to the standard where you're not going to be tripping over weeds and things like that. So from a safety perspective, I think it's going to be much better. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chair, can I just ask a question? So, Mr. Mitchell, just so I understand correctly, so what you're proposing and what you're hoping that DOT will agree to is that the access way on your property would be left out. I mean, that would be right in, right out only.
Correct.
And there would be a splitter island in the middle to make that left turns difficult. But that you would not have those controls on the Holiday Inn access.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think that, part of it too is, unfortunately, I love it here, but we live in New England, and so, we have to be able to remove snow in that pork chop area, whatever it is that we constructed. Scott recommended cobblestone, but I know my contractor would be yelling at me when I'm taking the calls and they're turning over cobblestones and such by trying to clean it up. So those grooved concrete, they are plus or minus about a 3-inch reveal. You don't want to hit it, but at the same token, you can at least elevate a plow and clean it quite easily without catching. And that's really what I'm after, keeping it clean and safe, all season.
So that it would be that the trucks would be able to go in and out, but that it would be difficult for vehicles to go.
Yeah,
You only do it once.
That's exactly
You
it.
never do it again.
I mean, if you're driving a 3,500 truck that has, 40-inch wheels on it, you probably don't feel it. But other than that, you're not going to want to hit it.
Great. Thank you.
So we just wanted to give you that update of where we are, so we're waiting for DOT, and we just wanted to be back at the board and give you an update of where we are and what we're trying to do.
Right.
What we've talked to our tenant, we got our tenant to buy into the right in, right out, and,
As far as I see.
So how does that?
I'm sorry?
I was wanted to ask how that diverter thing you were just mentioned work with the crosswalk there.
It's going to have to be engineered appropriately by our traffic engineer. So I'm not exactly sure about how the crosswalk configuration is. I don't know if we can move it forward a little bit or move it back a little bit. I'm going to leave that up to them. It's not my forte, but nonetheless, we talked about it, discussed it, and from what I understand, it's very doable. As far as I'm concerned, quite honestly, next steps would be for us to get some formal response from DOT in which we can share with the board. And we're hoping to come back at the next meeting and be able to present those findings to the board, and we'll have our team with us to be able to answer any specific questions related to that or any site items.
All right, so that would be April 9th?
Yes, sir.
That's what you're requesting? All right, is there any more questions before we continue this to April 9th? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Can I just unplug? It's not going to hurt anything?
Yes.
Unplug it.
We brought the mascot with us today.
You should have showed that to
Oh, you
us like
should have-
before the start of the meeting.
Yeah, I
this
know
is-
that was there.
He's babysitting, so he's with me today.
So, and the public hearing also is continued to April 9th.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, so cute. I'm such a bad-
Improvements and site enhancements. Site plan application for facade improvements and site enhancements around rear building, drainage improvements, relocation of northerly crosswalk on Mill Road, and conditional use for reuse of drive-through window for bank. Torrington Properties, care of Pete Doucette and Matt Morgan, property owner, Steve Mayer of Allen Major, engineer, Jeff Gannon, PCA Incorporated architect, and Greg Michelides, agent. This is in the Central Business District, map 109, lot 3.
Good evening. Good evening. Greg Michelides, August Consulting. Stephen Mayer from Allen and Majors. Pete Doucette from Torrington is on Zoom. We were last before you folks on 3/12. This is our third meeting with the planning board. We've done a lot of work over the last 2 weeks to hopefully get approval tonight. We met again with the TRG on 3/18. We addressed the letter from the Oyster River Local Advisory Council. We communicated with DPW Engineering on stormwater design in the Mill Road crossing, and we revised the plans per comments from the planning board that we received at the March 12th meeting. Emergency egress to Chelsea Drive has been removed. Bike racks, we've added another bike rack, covered bike rack behind the proposed patio. Stephen can show it there. So now we have a total of 48 bike racks, 36 exist, 89 required. We are going to be asking for a waiver tonight on that. We discussed that last time. Clarified the note on the crosswalk to work out the final details with DPW across Mill Road. I'm confident we'll get that final detail. I've talked to Rich all the time. So you can see we've added the plan. We've lost a couple parking spaces there. We're fine with that. And then we swapped out the pin oaks for autumn blaze maple trees that are more salt tolerant, and we increased the caliper to 2.5, 3 inch. So Michael issued a draft decision. We have no comments on that. So with that, I think we're in agreement on everything, but I'll leave it to you folks.
Any questions for the applicant before we open the public hearing? All right, shall we have the public hearing?
I make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this?
Couple hands up in Zoom, by the way.
Okay.
I need,
Oh, you need a seat, sorry.
Paul, do you want to start with the Zoom person?
All right, Josh, I'm going to take someone from Zoom while you get set up. Is that all right? I'm going to take somebody from Zoom while you connect.
perfect, thank you.
All right, I need one of the hands from Zoom then. Who do we have out there? M? All right, M?
Hello. Ruby is now down for the evening, so I can put the video. So I thought it would be helpful to hear from the planning board an explanation for why architectural standards do not come into play with this application. And I also, beyond hearing that, I would kind of, for the applicant's benefit, hope that perhaps something could be done ornamental to the roof line if we're going to go ahead and replace the roof. Because it is such a long stretch of very, very boring roof, that's not very attractive. Some options that are mentioned in the architectural regulations include perhaps some faux cupolas or even just some brackets added, or faux dormers. Those are kind of common ornamental elements that we see added in shopping plazas in the area, but something to break that up. And I do have an image that provides an example of that. That, here they are, I'm just sharing very quickly. So here's an example. This is kind of like the metal roof that is currently on Mill Plaza, but obviously then it goes flat. And these are just PVC brackets, little sort of ornamental pieces along that roof line. So there are a lot of options out there that are all PVC for doing sort of faux, brackets, whatever it may be, which I think would be a lovely addition to really make the building look much more upscale now that the roof's being done anyway without adding a lot. But I'd also ask the board to explain for the benefit of the public why the architectural regulations don't apply.
Oh, Mr. Chair. Oh, the architecture regulations do apply, so that's all open for discussion. I mean, in my view, I think they meet them, but there's many, many pages, and so there may be different opinions on that.
Well, then I'd ask the board to comment on, I think directly in there it says mansard roofs are not permitted and any large expensive roof shall be broken up with ornamental elements. I think those are kind of direct quotes from the architectural regulations.
Oh, are you referring to the mansard roof?
Yes.
Oh, well, that's because the mansard roof is in place now, and so they're keeping the structure of it, but I understand they're refacing, but they're keeping the underlying structure of it. If it was a new mansard roof, I don't think that the board would approve it, but that's something that can be discussed since it's an existing.
So this would be a good chance to use the term historically exempt instead of the other term.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not really replacing the roof, and so I don't think it would be historically exempt. I think it's just that it's just a continuing situation, because they're not replacing the roof in any way.
No,
They're just
that's what I'm
beautifying it.
saying. They're
Yeah.
historically exempt from the requirement to break it up.
Yeah, I guess so, that you could say it that way, but
Yeah.
they're,
Potentially.
Perhaps. I don't know. I mean, I'm just asking the question. That's the theory.
it's an existing condition.
Right, that's a judgment for the board.
Okay. Anything else, then? That was it? All right, thank you. Joshua?
All right. Joshua Morrow at 7 Chesley Drive, so I'm trying to get up on your screen here. So you actually ended up getting sort of two previews of this, because Michael forwarded one I had sent him as a secret preview. But then I sent yesterday one that addressed both issues, so it's okay. So this just quickly about the tripping spots and trash on the path into and out of Mill Plaza, part of which is on the plaza property, about a third of the path. And so I mentioned this in passing last time, but we were focusing on another issue. So there's that pretty bad trip spot on the left there at that back drain.
and we get a lot of trash blows in from the prevailing winds, including that welcoming, Rite Aid welcoming people to New Hampshire to the plaza. So, and the trip spot is pretty big, depending on how deep you sink into the mud there. It's about almost 2 inches, maybe 1.75 inches. The path overall is in very bad shape, and the complication here, which I didn't mention because I thought I'd try to speak to Rich about it, but we were missing each other, is that the whole path needs repaving. Part of it is on town property, or part of it is not on the plaza property, I guess would be the way to put it, and a path maintained by the town. And so just a few more pictures than I sent you in the letter that I sent yesterday, that was forwarded you today. You can see the whole path is in bad shape. This is from the other end, all broken up. Pieces of asphalt from plowing. Just, and then at night, it's beautifully dark at night, but it leads to a lot of us to stumble and lose our footing because we expect a straight path, and the path is quite broken. So I was just hoping that this could be taken care of as part of the project. You can see this is like that big crack right there on the left is on the plaza property, pieces of asphalt on the right, trash. So I'm certain, knowing Torrington, I'm sure that they'll include this in their maintenance, but I just thought it should be something that should be addressed as part of the routine maintenance. This is on the other side of the path. Also, a lot of both sides of the path is what I'm saying, is a lot of the trash, and also blown into the brook. So that's all I have to say. I hope that we can fix that path and make it safe and smooth and beautiful, consistent with what Torrington's trying to do with the property.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments?
All right. Thank you, Joshua. Did we have a second hand in Zoom?
We did.
I'll take that hand now.
Hi, it's Robin Mower on 6 Britton Lane. I'm thankful that the suggestions, the application are moving forward. We obviously would appreciate improvements at the plaza. And thank you, Josh, for pointing out the challenges of that path. I know there are elderly people in the faculty neighborhood who now hesitate to walk to the plaza, although it's an easy walk to that path. They are reluctant to walk on that path. I'm weighing in just because I heard mention of a TRG meeting on March 18, and I don't see notes posted on the town website about that meeting. Wondered if there is something that perhaps the public might like to know more about. I'm assuming that the planning board received copies of those minutes. But
I can do a recap.
Did I send notes about the meeting?
No.
Well, that's an important component, obviously, of any application, so.
You want me to do a recap?
Go ahead, Rob.
Robin, this is Robert Sullivan. I was at the TRG meeting, and I think the principal things that we talked about, one was there was an extensive discussion with the fire department and DPW about the second entrance, and we agreed as a group that the second entrance discussion about using Chesley Drive would be not needed and not pursued at this time. Rich Rain's email kind of covers a lot of that. So that relieved a lot of that discussion about was that going to become a potential vehicle, future confusion down there. Another thing we discussed at that meeting was that the whole boundary between the brook and the parking lot, that path should be separated from the current facade improvements because that's a complicated discussion, like what does that sidewalk look like? And to invest money in the Chesley Drive connection seemed like it might not be appropriate to do right away. The second entrance was resolved by having the new crosswalk be built in such a way that it was fat enough and wide enough for the emergency vehicles to come over what will be a depressed curve and drive into the plaza. That's why there's a couple parking spaces now missing along the front there, because they have to be kept open for, vehicle access in case that ever happened. And then the other thing was the path as it exists right now in front of the works was going to be somehow obviously signed and prevent people from walking across the sidewalk where the current crosswalk is. And that could be a chain link fence, not a chain link fence, but some sort of chain or a sign with a post with a sign right in the middle of it that said go left or go right, whatever that detail. I don't think, Greg, you guys haven't defined that detail yet. And then we also discussed with Torrington these trip hazards that Josh mentioned tonight, so they were aware of that. And maybe, Greg, you can talk about that when you get up. Did I cover everything, Michael? I think that was pretty much it.
Rob and I usually get the notes out pretty soon. I just wasn't too much going on, so I wasn't able to get them out. But I think Rob covered the discussion, and whatever was talked about is reflected in their plans, and I incorporated into the draft notice of decision. The biggest issue was, as Rob mentioned, that Public Works agreed to shift that emergency access to Mill Road rather than Chesley Drive.
And our requests from the last meeting about bike racks and a covered bike rack were all honored and are in the drawings.
Right, so there will be some covered bike racks at the rear and additional bike racks in the front.
And just for clarification, Pete did put in writing, we sent you an email end of last week. We do agree we'll repave that section of the path that's on our property. And now that the snows melt, their maintenance crew get out there and clean up all the trash up. So we agreed to do that. And actually, we put it in writing too, just in an email to you.
Oh, I'm sorry, what was the last part?
I said we put in an email. Pete put in an email last week. I know you probably get barraged, but Pete just says we agree to clean it up and clean up the path.
And just to be clear, I don't think you guys are saying you're going to repave the whole path. You're going to clean up the trip hazard mess, and then someday, when a new plan comes out, then the path might become something better.
Exactly.
Well, only a portion of the path that runs from Chesley is on the Mill Plaza property, and then the rest of it is on the town's right-of-way.
Yeah.
So you would be improving that or enhancing that on your property.
Yeah, just that small section that shows right there. You can see it in red. Steven's got a box up there. Yeah, it's a very short section. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. If you could have a seat, I have more public to speak.
Katie Ellis, Co-Drive. I just wanted to say, I hadn't been keeping up well, and I wanted to say thank you to the public safety group for shifting to the Mill Road for the second day. So I really appreciate that.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
Just very quickly, just to follow, if there's any way we can, that's not that long a path, and it's very hard to patch it, I think, the way it's structured. It'd be great, whatever is needed between the town and the plaza, to put a fresh coat of asphalt on that narrow path to make it safe for everybody who walks through there very often in the dark. Thank you.
No. You can bring that to Public Works.
Right, I will encourage Public Works and Mill Plaza to coordinate on their respective parts of that path.
Yeah. Actually, we agree. Yes, we totally agree.
Are there any more hands in Zoom?
Nope.
All right. You stated your You find the notice of decision acceptable?
We do, yes. And we're looking for 2 votes. One would be the waiver on the bikes, the bike racks, number of bike racks, and second would be the conditional use for the drive-through.
Yep.
Oh, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Can we ask the applicant to respond to the comments from M. Friedrichs about the architecture?
It's a matter of opinion. I think it's a matter of opinion. Some people have told us it looks really nice, and, you know, we came in with the other style, and we heard that that looked like, you know, southeast. So I think it's a matter of opinion. Torrington's, it's a significant upgrade to that facade. We are putting some details in there. The biggest thing is, you know, widening that sidewalk, making it pedestrian friendly, all new signage, painting the brick, you know, upgrading the facade. We're not repairing the whole roof. We're not taking the whole roof off. We're upgrading that facade. So I think it's a big improvement. I think you guys have heard me say this the last couple of times. I went to school here in the 70s. That's what it looked like in the 70s. So I'm actually happy with what we're turning it into.
Let's deal with the waiver next. And, because while you look up that other piece of paper that I need. We're going to have 40 bicycle parking spaces is...
We have 46, 36 exist, 89 required.
Yeah. The 89 comes because the way we calculate it is based on the number of parking spaces on the property.
I don't think I've ever seen that many bikes in
We could, if I'm not sure I'd ever see more than 15 or 20, but so what we need to do as a planning board would be to decide whether or not we're going to grant the waiver, saying that effectively says the proposed number of bike racks is sufficient for the needs of the property, even though it's less than what our site plan regs require.
I agree that the waiver makes sense.
Yeah.
I would agree with that as well. And in the
there's growth,
case
they
that
can
they're
always
all
do it.
full, I think the engineering to add additional bike racks and additional bike storage is not significant.
Easy.
And that would be something that would be driven by demand and by your requirement to have more customers that
Exactly.
are.
If we needed 20 more, we'd do 20
If
more.
they're full, I think the tenants would respond by adding additional bike racks. So I would say that the waiver makes sense, and if there's a requirement later on to have additional, that they would probably provide it to bring in more customers.
And you can make that a condition of approval, because we would do it. If we need 80 bike racks, we're gonna want them in order, not strewn all over the place. So, yeah, we're fine with adding what's needed.
All right, then we'll need a motion for the waiver. A simple one. All right. I'll move that we grant a waiver for the number of bike racks on site.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, now, conditional use. Yes, there we are. All right, now, this is going to be for some of you, this is going to be your first conditional use. I'm going to be, the way our,
You do have to explain it.
the way our zoning's written, for conditional use, I'm going to read through all these different, 8 different things, and we have to agree that, we need a supermajority agreeing that for each one of these items. All right, so my first is a question for the town planner. Were all the applications, notices, and signage posted?
Yes.
Thank you. Item 1, is the site suitable for the proposed use? This includes adequate vehicular and pedestrian access for the intended use. We're talking here about specifically the drive-through for the bank at the end of building 2. The availability of adequate public services to serve the intended use, including emergency services, pedestrian facilities, schools, and other municipal services. The absence of environmental constraints like floodplain, steep slope, or the development of a plan to substantially mitigate the impacts of those constraints. And the availability of appropriate utilities to serve the intended use, including water, sewage disposal, stormwater disposal, electricity, and similar utilities. Now, my thought is, there's already a
Exists there.
bank teller window there, drive-through window there for a previous bank, and I don't think things have changed much significantly to indicate that that was an issue. Right, so I don't see any
It's been
issue
there
with the
before.
suitability of
Yeah.
of that proposed use.
Suitable.
External impacts. The external impacts of proposed use on abutting properties in the neighborhood shall be no greater than the impacts of adjacent existing uses or other uses permitted in the zone. This shall include but not be limited to traffic noise, odors, vibrations, dust, fumes, hours of operation, and exterior lighting and glare. In addition, the location, nature, design, and height of the structure and its appurtenances, its scale with reference to its surroundings and the nature and intensity of the use shall not have an adverse effect on the surrounding environment, nor discourage the appropriate and orderly development and use of the land and buildings of the neighborhood.
It's already there.
So, so the only possible issue I could think of would be potentially headlights, but the cars are going to be pointing towards Main Street, so it would only be taillights pointing at the neighborhood.
There's already a parking lot there.
And there is
already
a parking
cars
lot in,
active there, yeah.
So, I'm not feeling much in the way of external impact issues.
No, it's fine.
All right. 3, character of the site development. The proposed layout and design of the site shall not be incompatible with the established character of the neighborhood and shall mitigate any external impacts of the use on the neighborhood. This shall include but not be limited to the relationship of the building to the street, the amount, location, and screening of off-street parking, the treatment of yards and setbacks, the buffering of adjacent properties, and provisions for vehicular and pedestrian access to and within the site. I mean, this is all the way in the back of the building, basically out of sight of almost everything, with the exception of Chesley Drive.
And it's existing.
It's existing.
And it's,
architecture.
yeah, and it's existing, so we're not really changing anything other than it's going to become a little active again. So, character of the building's instructions, the character of the buildings and structures are not changing, so I really don't think this one's pertinent for this particular conditional use. Preservation of natural, cultural, historic, and scenic resources. Again, we're reusing all of the existing infrastructure that's in place. There isn't anything new being touched. So that criteria is met. Impact on property values. Proposed use will not cause or contribute to a significant decline in property values of adjacent properties. I don't see that happening.
No impact.
No effect. Availability of public services and facilities. Again, that's,
They already have them.
I mean, the bank is already there. It's just moving to the other side of the building, and that's about the only actual change. So there's so that criteria is met. And fiscal impacts is the proposed use will not have a negative fiscal impact on the town unless the planning board determines that there are other positive community impacts that offset the negative fiscal aspects of the proposed use. Planning board's decision shall be based upon an analysis of the fiscal impact of the project on the town. The planning board may commission at the applicant's expense an independent analysis of the fiscal impact of the project on the town. So this isn't going to have a negative impact on the town.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anyone on the board who'd like to dispute any of those findings?
I think it's pretty cut and dry.
All right. Then, do we have to make another motion?
I would vote separately on that.
Vote separately? All right, then we'll need a motion to grant the conditional use. So given Given that those criteria have been met, I'll move that we grant the conditional use for a drive-through window for the bank at the existing location of the drive-through window.
A second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Those are those two approvals. So that's checked, that's checked.
We're making progress.
Any issues with the notice of decision from the board members?
Nothing for me.
No.
I had one question about the mural 25. The applicant will coordinate with the plan, with the design. I think Pete made it plain at the TRG meeting that he wanted the final decision as opposed to a committee decision. Is that how you guys feel about it?
Yeah, I think Pete can speak for himself, but yeah, what Pete wants to present something to Michael and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. And it's going to be, Pete, I'll let you speak for yourself. Are you there?
Pete is on Zoom.
Yeah, Greg, I'm here.
Okay.
Sorry, I was just unmuting.
Yeah.
Yes, so on the mural, I mean, I've already engaged a couple of artists, local, and we would like to just come up with something that we feel works with the property and the building. I think we already said it's not going to be specific to a tenant. It's going to be I think, in line with something that we would feel would fit, the area. And so, separately, we'd like to come and just have a meeting and present our vision and work through it as a team, external of this.
Do we need to modify this, that they have the decision, or do we have a veto power? I didn't want to get in an argument about the
Without
mural.
getting into too much language, I have been wrong before, but I'm confident that the town will be able to coordinate with Mill Plaza and we'll have a consensus. If that's not the case, then we'll have to figure something out.
I'm confident of that too, Michael.
Okay, good. Anything more?
I don't have any changes at all.
All right. Would someone else like to take this one, or? All right.
You're looking for the...
This is when I really miss Richard Kelly. Okay.
You want the facade improvements? You want this one?
Yeah. So, I will move to approve the notice of decision of March 26, 2025 for the Mill Plaza various improvements at 5 Mill Road by property owner Torrington Properties, map 109, lot 3 in the Central Business District.
Second that? You have more do you have to also say the other things?
I was thinking about it, but we didn't amend anything, right?
No.
So there were no amendments to be included. Very good. And, all right, so I have a second from Heather. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a nice night.
Thanks, guys.
We look forward to seeing the work we have.
Yeah.
We actually approved a Mill Plaza application. And it didn't take 4 years of our life.
4 years?
Where's the champagne?
Just about, Michael.
Oh, a lot more than 4 years.
4 months.
Well, it took 4 years of my life.
All right.
And there's no way to get them back.
You won't be getting that back anytime.
All right, item 12. 4-lot re-subdivision, 53 Baghdad Road and 51 Emerson Road. re-subdivision of 3 current lots into 4 lots. They're 53 Baghdad Road, map 104, lots 41 and 42, owned by Frank Lavaliere, Quinn Lin, and Quan Lee. 51 Emerson Road, map 104, lot 40, owned by John and Nichols Laus. Bob Baskerville is the engineer of Bedford Design Consultants. This is in the Residence A District.
There we go. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Robert Baskerville from Bedford Design Consultants. I'm working for our clients, Frank Lavalier. We did all of the land surveying and civil engineering on this, and we hired Luke Hurley to flag the wetlands, and we located those wetlands. First off, let me pull up your GIS plan. So what we show here is we bought lots 41 and 42 on Baghdad Road with the intention of building on lot 41, which is a back lot. It's got a very thin access back to it, been taxed as a buildable lot up until now, but there's no house on it. Lot 42 has a very old structure on it. I believe the house was built in 1715, and the client has been working with Michael to restore it to the greatest extent possible. There's been a lot that's been, it's an old house, so there were certain things that had to be changed. A little bit on that. The intent is, since the old house is very old, is keep that there, build a new house behind it. So the main residence would be behind the house. The 1715 home would be an ADU to the new house. And then the intent was to subdivide off one additional lot. So we bought 2 lots, and we wanted to subdivide it into one additional house lot. When we bought it, and this plan actually shows it pretty good, when we bought the land, when you look at that 15-foot strip back to lot, we showed as lot 3. This is our proposed plan, but what's lot 42? I walked out with Frank. There's a row of evergreens on one side that's perfectly straight. There was an old garage there that is parallel to it, and you looked out, it's flat and straight, and everybody thought that was the access. That was incorrect. We found a pin over on the far right corner of that green area. So our access was not where we thought it was, which caused a problem because that was going to interfere with setbacks to the house we were planning to build. It just wasn't where we expected. In Frank talking to the neighbor, he is still on a septic system and there's another sewer line out in front of his house. They discussed, could we run a sewer line through our property and also then take care of his house and put him on a sewer line? It all worked out over the course of a month or 2. So what this is, that house on your left, lot 40, was not purchased by us, but he agreed to do a lot line adjustment. We would take from him what's in green, 3,328 square feet, give him what's in yellow?
Yeah.
Which is the exact same amount. So his lot area doesn't change at all, our lot area doesn't change at all. But then it moves our 15-foot access back to where everybody thought it was. In exchange for that, we're going to run a sewer line up to his property and have an easement through our property for his future maintenance. So it all kind of seemed to work out, but it made our plan more complicated because we're moving lot lines and then re-subdividing as all part of one sheet. So for this one, I just want to break it out to show you how the lot line adjustment works. On this next one, so what we have here, this front lot where the existing house is would still have its frontage on Baghdad Road. There will be 2 driveway entrances. The garage for the house will come in where the old access was here. There's an old driveway here. This is a foundation pad for the old garage, which will be demolished and removed. So there'll be a new house here behind the house with an access here. There'll be a separate entrance and parking lot for the ADU. On Old Baghdad Road, about where you see the mouse here, there's 2 4-foot-high big granite posts, an old driveway. We're going to use that as to be the entrance to go in, to be the entrance for the ADU. This lot in blue is one reason we really want to talk to you, is on your GIS plan, you show Baghdad Road as being a Class 6 road. And Baghdad Road used to extend across the street. That's Class 6. It used to go under what is now Route 4. That's Class 6. When our surveyors tackled this, we couldn't find any town action that said you had discontinued it. The other way to become Class 6 is to not monitor or not maintain it for 5 years. There's 2 houses on that road, water and sewer. The town still plows it and maintains the road. So in our opinion, it's Class 5. Still an active, maintained town road. Michael is hopefully going to get in touch with the town attorney, and I'll let you chip in later. So we're treating it like it's a Class 5 road. There's a sewer line there. We've talked to April. We're going to run that darker green patch on my screen. Is a sewer line easement that will pick up 4 houses. Lot 40, the 2 new houses, and the old house, all into one sewer line, go down to that sewer manhole, and we talked to her, we'll do a drop structure on it. It's a very deep manhole. There's water lines on both Old Baghdad Road and Baghdad Road, so water lines will be pretty straightforward. There's the driveways all work nicely. The lot in back, we extended it and made it a little bigger. What used to be lot 41, now it's our proposed lot 3. What we did to kind of show you how things work. Oh, I didn't do it in color. We showed possible house locations on all of the lots. So you can see for that front lot where the historic home is, you keep the historic home, you keep a little portion here, but then the new house gets built beyond the house. But the historic house still stays right up in front where it used to be. This lot on Old Baghdad Road, there's no wetlands, no steep slopes, it all works pretty nice, there's really no question there. The back lot will do a driveway up the existing access road. It's straight and flat. We came in, we showed a house that in total between the house and the garage was about 1,580 square feet and 3 parking spots. So we showed 2 parking spots in the garage and an additional 3 spots out front. There was a concern in our review group meeting that we needed more parking spots. During our meeting with the town, Mike suggested you've had issues from the town before, people building things that are too large. So he suggested that we agree to a smaller footprint. I thought it was a little tight, I'll mention that, but the client agreed with Mike. So he agreed to limit that house out to 1,300 square feet, which is both the total for the footprint for the garage and the house. So if you do a 500 square foot garage, you've only got an 800 square foot footprint for the actual house itself. So
Millennials and Millennials and Z Genners are looking at wanting smaller footprint homes.
Oh, I agree.
Well, you're going to have a second story though, right?
I've got a lot up in Concord, and I'm going to try to do. One frustration I've had for 20 years as a civil engineer and a surveyor. Big house, big lots, big houses. I've done a lot of plans to try to do small houses in towns, and it's tough. Between the clients and the towns, I've had a really hard time doing smaller houses. I'm just trying to explain the process we went through and what we agreed to. That's agreed. Let me look at my notes. I think I've covered all the points I want to cover. We do have a 4th sheet in the set. Let me just go through all 4 sets. So we do our subdivision plans. Sheet 1 is the sheet that gets recorded at the registry. So we show all setbacks, all property lines, etc. We always do a sheet 2 where we add topographic lines to it. It's good for everybody to see it, good for the builders to see it, everybody sees it, but that information isn't needed on the registry plan, and it just makes the plan busier. Sheet 3 shows the lot development plan for you, just to show you how we plan to build and configure the houses. And there's a 4th sheet that and it's not up on the screen right now. It's on my kids here. We did a sewer profile sheet for April, showing a 4-inch line going down, cleanouts every 100 feet, and how that easement will go up there. Per the town's suggestion, we at one time had the easement actually on the property line. We moved that so it's on the property instead of on a property line, per the town's suggestion. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to mention. I'd be glad to answer any questions you have, and the owners and developers are here to answer any questions if you have anything for them.
Chair, I just asked. It was the first time I had heard the distinction between the Class 5 and Class 6 roads.
Right.
And I was reading about that and digging into that, and I still don't understand the sort of how that matters, or how is that impacting this, or is it just the distinction between we're maintaining it, so you'd call it a Class 5 versus a Class 6. So I was just wondering maybe if you could just speak to that for just a sec.
My first comment will be, when you look at the law and surveying and lawyers of Class 5 and Class 6, I could talk for a week, so let's not do that. Yeah. But in general, most Class 6 roads are not maintained by a town. So there's a lot of towns will give you limitations on building a house on a Class 6 road because the town doesn't plow it. And the neighbors then would have to get together and form an association to plow it. And in every town it's different. You go to either the Board of Selectmen or the town council or the town government to get permission to build on a Class 6 road. So a lot of towns have issues of building on a Class 6 road. The main point here is the town plows it, they maintain it. Right. But there's, in a GIS plan, as engineers, we know you can never count on a GIS plan. It's fantastic for information, to get information, but we check everything. And whoever did the GIS plan could see a note saying Baghdad Road discontinued. And that side's discontinued, and this side is discontinued. So to us, having it on a GIS plan isn't definitive. That's why we did the extra research. To discontinue a Class 5 road, you either have to, there's prescribed ways to do it. If a town has a road and for 5 straight years you don't maintain it at all, you do nothing, then it's called a Class 6 road. Or the town could take a vote and say from this point to this point, we're done, we're not going to maintain it, and you make a vote and you make it Class 6. Well, it hasn't gone 5 years without maintenance, but you're still plowing it. And we couldn't find, and we asked the town for documentation if this section ever been officially closed, and we couldn't find that. But the point was, a GIS plan says this, we're not showing it like that. So that's why I wanted to be clear and explain our rationale.
And so in looking at the aerial shot you have of the neighborhood, it looks like it might be Class 6 behind the driveways into lots 43 and 44, but you have existing highway houses with driveways that feed into that point. So presumably it's maintained up to that point.
Yeah, it's maintained, I think, up to the last driveway, a little past it, so they have room to turn around. I think I heard that sewer line actually still goes underneath Route 4 and accesses the houses on the other side of the road. So that old Baghdad Road used to go across Route 4. All of that got reconfigured by the state DOT when they built the overpass there.
Right.
And all of that got, so one interesting thing, it's a little off the plan here, down at the bottom, Baghdad Road goes from about a 50-foot right-of-way to a 150-foot right-of-way, just past Old Baghdad Road. So this was right at the tail of what the state took for their property and redesigned back when they built that overpass and redid the road there.
And in Michael's comments, about the class 5, class 6, there was a question about the town, is the town maintaining it? And the town paved the road sometime in the past, but 5 years, and the town currently plows it. So that maintenance was acknowledged by DPW, correct?
Yeah, but I've got to follow up with the town attorney because there's some complexity in the state law about it. If it was not maintained for more than 5 years in the past, that probably made it class 6. And even if we start maintaining it now, that doesn't convert it. But I don't know whether it had to be a vote to discontinue. But we'll clarify that, at least certainly prior to final action.
So for our purposes, if it is a class 6 road, who has to grant the approval for the subdivision? Is that still in our hands, or does it now have to also go to the town council?
Well, if there's an old town policy for class 6 roads. If it's a class 6 road, the town council would need to approve this because you cannot issue a building permit without, council must approve a building permit. And the applicant, there'd be no guarantee of us maintaining it. They would have to give an indemnification to the town in case it's not maintained and the fire department can't get back there. And I believe per our old policy, the town actually would have to approve the subdivision. So it's more complicated. I think the town would have, this council would need to approve. I think, I have to check that old policy. But it's just more complicated. But I suspect if it is found to be a class 6 road, which is unlikely, the council, I think there's a very good chance the council would vote to make it a class 5 road because we have houses on there, it's been maintained, we have a sewer line. There would be no reason to leave it as a class 6. So I think it should work out fine either way.
Right, but I didn't want to leave that as something to come up later.
Yeah.
Let's deal with it now.
I agree, which is why I wanted to know where our side was going to have to land. Any questions for the applicant? All right, Mr. Barron, is the application complete?
Yes.
All right, tonight we need to accept the application as complete, and is this public hearing already set for April 9th?
Yes, and we have to set it in advance, as you know.
So then I'll move that we accept the application as complete. Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I guess we're done.
Well, unless you want to have a site walk.
Do we want to have a site walk? Well, the snow's up now, so.
And also, we discussed this in the TRG, so just because they don't have those notes yet, at the TRG meeting, the whole discussion was really about class 5, class 6, that nuance, and then we discussed access, the 3 access points, which there's actually 4 access points. We discussed those, and nobody flagged anything that was particularly troublesome about any of those 4 driveway accesses.
Yeah, I was actually quite happy to see that all the buildings were up front. Nobody was trying to cross the wetlands to get.
Yeah, we're avoiding.
Yeah, I didn't mention that. There's no wetland impact
So,
on this.
I mean, that is a almost unique occurrence for us.
I was happy.
Well, make it back up to the 4, so I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, well, so.
Yeah, it'd be further in.
So then, yeah, so, all right, so you just report on the TRG site walk. So yeah, I mean, if we're doing the wetlands, I definitely want a site walk.
Okay, without a sidewalk.
If we're not, but since we're not impeding on wetlands, I'm not sure we really need one. And how do people think?
I agree.
You agree? All right. Very good then. We will see you back here on April 9th.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and by the way, I want to note that the applicant has really been excellent in cooperating with the Historic District Commission and the town to try to do right by this property.
All right. Let me just put that into that section. We have two, well, actually, before we go to that, is there any other business?
I have one thing. I would like to just kind of raise my hand and say M's issue on the effect of septic systems in the on the aquifer. I'm just wondering whether there's any process in place with the water people to kind of monitor the effect of development on the water in the aquifer and to kind of know when the time will, you know, I wouldn't feel right if her having raised the question, the first time I learned about it was that we really should have looked hard at the septic regulation and site plans and revisited them based on, but now there's been more development and there's really not much to do about it. That was just my concerns. I think we'll have plenty of advance warning if water quality starts to deteriorate in the aquifer. That's monitored regularly, and I know the water test is tested regularly, but is the relationship between the density and the water quality analyzed?
Well, that's a good question. Not by Public Works, because Public Works has its own water. Public Works, the public town water is analyzed very, very often. As far as the quality of the aquifer for private individual homes that are on well, I think the state has a pretty good handle.
The
individuals.
We have artesian wells, but do we use anything from this aquifer? No.
Well, the aquifer really runs, pretty broad. Those are just particular sections where there's high levels of transmissivity, but much of that land is part of the aquifer. I think the state has a pretty good handle on it, and certainly individual homeowners.
Before they build a well, they have to get their water tested, and they're told what's in that water. And they'll mitigate.
It's up to them how long
And it's up to the state then to think about the density of development and the density of the number of septic systems and the effect of that on the aquifer.
I don't think I think the state, isn't it just that the density is determined by the municipality?
By the soil, yeah.
Yeah, it's not determined by the aquifer.
No, that doesn't affect.
There's no.
We have a number of restrictions in the overlay district. For better or for worse, the aquifer does not cover very much land, and it's all in the rural and residence coastal, except a small part in Orley, which is very low density.
It's very low density. I just wondered whether it's low density enough so that if it were more densely developed pursuant to our regulations, whether...
All depends on what you said. I mean, the aquifer zones that are on Packers Falls Road are quite heavily built upon already.
Yeah, this
Yeah, I would say that the green hatches are almost fully built out with our current zoning. And the reason why they're flagged there is because Spruce Hole Bog is over there, and that's one of the key wells. And the way the geology is, the sand, it's basically a gravel pit made of sand. So it's the water, anything that goes on the ground there is going to penetrate.
I'm not so concerned about the density of development with the green hatched areas, but just overall in the areas that are off of where town sewer is unavailable. If I understood Em correctly, she's saying septic is inadequate for certain contaminants. It lets them through. It does. I just wondered whose responsibility that is and whether,
First question is, where are those contaminants coming from? All right, and I mean, for residences, the only place those contaminants are coming from are effectively your faucet. So whatever water you're pulling out of the ground, you're putting back in.
The laundry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
you're,
it's a circular thing. So I mean, the whole
Comes out of your well, goes
ideas
into
of
your septic.
PFAS or whatever, which is what she was talking about, right?
It's everywhere.
You don't bring PFAS into your house. It's already in your house. You know,
I see what you mean.
You're not flushing. You yourself aren't bringing something that has PFAS in it and flushing it down the toilet.
You're pulling it out and putting it back in, whatever. So I didn't want to open a can of worms at 9:15, but I just thought that M's comment was thoughtful enough that forward-looking, I wanted to make sure I had an understanding of what we were doing. I don't quite yet, but that would have to happen tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it's would be different if we were going to be, you know, building a flame retardant manufacturing facility out there on top of one of these zones. That would be a concern. You know, and the whole question of, is that something we'd want to allow if we have some way of stopping it anyway?
yeah, we already don't allow it.
About the, you know, that would be it, really. Right, it's how do you, it's more dealing with the industrial, commercial aspects of things that might create those chemicals to begin with. All right, we have, so, good discussion. Anything else for other business?
Peyton, I think, has
Can I
something.
just ask one question? Because I was going to ask it when we were discussing the Dunkin' Donuts. And I'm not sure this is appropriate, but I'll just ask. Let's just say that we do approve it in whatever configuration the
Let's not
traffic.
talk about active applications when the applicant's not here.
Okay, that's fine. There's more, what do we do if there is an issue post-approval with remediation? Is there a process in place?
That's when you have a hopefully friendly discussion with the applicant. I mean, there were issues with both of them tonight where there were some things that we agreed on that are, have a little bit of goodwill in the future if there's an issue.
Enough said for now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a path.
All right, I will bring up, we have just, I was having a discussion with a couple of council members earlier today. We do have 7 or 8 different zoning amendments that are somewhere in a pipeline right now heading our way. All right, I'm trying to keep them moving and I'm trying to keep them prioritized and trying to, and not stacking up too much on top of each other. So, but I will assure you that pretty much as soon as we finish one big zoning ordinance thing, I'll have another one ready to slide in within a meeting or two.
Okay.
Okay, because we have 3 or 4 of those that are in the line, as well as a bunch of these little ones, which we'll keep throwing in there as necessary. So don't think you're almost done, just because we're getting close to the end of the PUD.
We have a busy summer.
All right.
Yeah, it ain't over till it's over.
And then it starts all over again.
Yeah.
All right.
True.
We have minutes of February 12th. And is that the one I have the, yeah, so February 12th minutes, which I just lost. Oh, how did I lose them? Had a typo on the back page. Page 8 line, I think it was 7. Did I throw it in there by
Yes,
mistake?
Chair Rasmussen safe.
Safe, yeah.
The board.
I said something, but it didn't come, but it came out with an F instead of a D.
Should be saith.
Yes, so.
English.
I
Saith.
think it almost sounds French to me, but that could be more the lettering.
That's just as, yeah.
Yeah. So minimal typo there. Anything else for February 12th? All right. Move we accept the minutes of February 12th.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, what about February 26th?
I had something on page 2, line 17. Where my property should be her property, as this was referring to Beth Olshansky's comments in one of the public hearings.
One 3/4 and one next door to my,
I guess it would,
Yeah, she said
it
my
says
property,
my property,
but
it's in the wrong, yeah.
Yeah, it should be her property because it's referring to
Yeah.
Ms. Olshansky's property.
yes, okay.
She's not being quoted in this section.
Right, well, yeah, those were her actual words,
Yeah,
but they're not in
but
direct
it's
quotes
not,
here,
yeah.
so.
Very good. Anything else? I'll move that we accept the minutes of February 26th.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Anything else? I'll take a motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
That was a lot of items.
And we